Hello and welcome to the Bhagavatam. Today we're going to talk about attachment. And attachment is something fundamental to all of us. Let's trace the roots of attachment. For most of us, it begins with desire. We desire something. And then we get attached to our desire. Of course, why do we desire? Well, often it's because we see other people have something, or maybe the media is promoting something, or maybe we heard back as kids that we should have something. Maybe that something would be some kind of thing of fashion, something of technology, something of security like a house or something to get around in a car. And then we see other people and they have certain kinds of cars or houses or clothes or whatever else it might be. And we think, I should have that too. And so our desire is our vulnerability. And it can be exploited by so many people, from advertisers to governments to family to society. We're completely vulnerable to desire. And we take it as a given. We take it as a fact of life. It's like, what can I do about that? But the reality is, for a person to advance in life, spiritually or even materially, you need to be able to curb desire, to be able to control desire. Because if you randomly chase desire, then it destroys you. Let's take an example of someone who is earning a certain amount of money, and then the whole month they're just busy trying to spend it and spend it and spend it. Well, they'll be broke really fast, and then they won't have any money to live on. That's just a simple example. If a business person keeps on investing money, or rather keeps on spending money on all kinds of luxury items just because they're making more money, well, they won't have any money to invest back into their business and grow their business. So a wise person learns that unrestricted desire can lead to my destruction. Now, what happens when we get what we desire? That's the next level. Because now we become attached to that which we've got. Well, there's even an earlier trap. What if our desire is unfulfilled? Then we begin to wonder if we're not worthy, not good enough. Maybe something's wrong with me. Others have it, but how come I don't? Others live in big fancy houses. Others have incredibly expensive cars or clothes or whatever else, and I don't. Maybe something's wrong with me. So self-doubt comes in, and that self-doubt is crippling, and it causes us to further spiral downwards and lose confidence and then feel depressed and inadequate. Because it's all a bunch of stories our mind is making up. None of it is based on truth. It has nothing to do with your worth. It has nothing to do with your value, but your mind's making stories up. All right, so now you get what you desire, and now you get attached to it. And then what happens? When you try to protect it, and you try to hold on to it, and you fear losing it. This applies to both our relationships and the things we have. In our relationships, it happens very dramatically. We become jealous if our partner is talking to somebody else. If they're even flirting a little bit or trying to be a little more friendly, we suspect that maybe something's going wrong. Maybe somebody else will come and take them away. And before they can take them away from us, we better just break off this relationship and leave them. We're insecure. We're fearful. We're anxious. Our attachments produce all of that. Because we don't want change. We want to hold on to what we have. But nothing in this world can be held on to. Nothing in this world will ever be ours. We know that at a deep level, and therefore we fear that. And as a result of which, we're unhappy. Our insecurity makes us unhappy. Our worry makes us unhappy. Our fear makes us unhappy. And that fear can even turn into panic. It can turn into all kinds of anger. It can turn into all kinds of jealousy. It can turn into rage. And then, if we actually lose the person or thing that we loved or cared for so much, if somebody bangs up that precious car of yours, or if somebody burgles that house of yours, or if someone runs away with the love of your life, then there is so much anger, so much devastation, so much that we may lose sleep, we may lose peace, we may certainly lose our happiness. It's as if our happiness was invested in this thing or this person, as if love came from this person and only they were the object of love, and only they could give us happiness, and only that thing could make us feel good. But all this is part of the illusion. None of this is true. And that's what we learn from texts like the Bhagavatam. Today we're going to read about someone called King Bharat. King Bharat was the son of Rishabdev, who we'd been talking about earlier. And although he was a great and powerful king, and although he had the entire world as his empire, he renounced it at some point and went into the forest. Renounced everything, his family, his palaces, his wealth, and focused himself and his attention in the later years of his life on his spiritual growth. That's what people did. That was the path of the Vedic culture. That there comes a point in your life when you've had it all, you've done it all. Now it's time to retire, get away from the world, get away from your attachments, and focus in on that which really matters, and that's your spirituality. All right, so here was King Bharat in the forest, and now he gets attached to a deer. How that happened, what happened, where did it take him? That's what we're going to find out. Let's get started. All right. So, King Bharat. We're going to read about his story, but if you remember the last few episodes, we've been talking about a certain king called Rishabdev. And Rishabdev had instructed his sons with incredible wisdom, and then he went off to become a mendicant, like an avadhut is the term used in Sanskrit, which means someone who the world would think is crazy. But he was deeply spiritually realized. He had no attachment to the ego, no connection with this worldly form, this human condition. He was deeply immersed in spirit. And so he lived as someone who was crazy, someone who people threw stones at, people who insulted. He didn't care, wasn't concerned one bit. So he had, before leaving his kingdom, he had instructed his sons. The eldest of his sons, the most qualified son, was Bharat. Now this Bharat was an incredible person. He himself, of course, had 5 sons and is with his wife, and the planet of this world, this planet, used to be called Ajanabh-varsh. That's what it was called in the Vedic era, Ajanabh-varsh. But after his reign, the planet became known as Bharatvarsh. And till today, in India, people have begun at least to call it once again Bharat. Not India, that was the name given by the British, but Bharat. That Bharat is named after King Bharat. Now, Bharat was a very learned and experienced king. He perfectly ruled the citizens and was as affectionate to them as his father and grandfather had been. So he had great role models. He learned from them how to be someone who was a wise king, someone who took care of his subjects as his own children. He protected them, and they were extremely fond of him. He also performed many yagyas, that is, sacrifices, ceremonies, to involve the people in worshipping God, the satisfaction of Vishnu. Why were yagyas and sacrifices performed? Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita that sacrifice for God must be performed. You know, the truth is that everything we do is a sacrifice. You go to work, you sacrifice your pleasure, you sacrifice your time with your family. When you are there, you have to be completely focused on your work. So that work becomes your absorption, your meditation. When you're at home, they don't want you to talk about your work. They want you to be present to them, to the kids, to your spouse. And then that becomes your meditation. And you've got to sacrifice work. You may want to work at home, but your family is going to be very upset with you. So you've got to sacrifice that. But the most important sacrifice we can make is the sacrifice not just of going to some temple or church or mosque, whatever it is you go to pray to, not just on a Sunday, not just on a certain Friday or whatever day people go, but it is the sacrifice of offering everything that we have and everything that we are to God, knowing that everything comes from God and belongs to God. And therefore our sacrifice is really not a sacrifice, it's actually an acceptance of the truth. If your child picked up your shoes and gave them to you, it looks like an offering of love. It seems like something they're doing for you. But in fact, the shoes are already yours. There's nothing that they're doing that you could not do yourself. But nevertheless, that act of love matters. In the same way, when we offer the fruits of our work, so let's say our salary, the money we earn, and we bring that as an offering to God. When we offer our house to God, when we offer our partner and all our material possessions to God, we are simply acknowledging the reality that everything belongs to God, that everything was given to us by God. You say, no, I worked hard for it. Certainly you did. But what gave you the ability to work? What to say of work hard? What gave you the ability that you could even work? Like if your heart was stopped, in 1 second, your ability would be gone. If your breathing stopped, that ability would be gone. What's making your heart beat? What is making your lungs breathe? What is making it possible for you to stand on 2 legs? What if gravity was turned off? You'd be floating up in the sky. You wouldn't make it to work. You'd be just floating out there. Might even land up in outer space. The point being, everything has been given to us. From the plants, to the animals, to the sunshine, to our body, everything was given to us. What we do with it, that is up to us, how we use it. But when we recognize that all of this belongs to God and we are grateful to God, and we, as a matter of trying to acknowledge God, we offer that which was given to us back to God, we acknowledge that God is the owner of everything, the proprietor, the person who has blessed us with so much, then that gratitude, that acceptance connects us with God. God doesn't need that. We need that. As far as God is concerned, we have free will. We can do whatever we like. We're completely free. But when we come back to God and we claim a relationship, when we claim our connection, then we're able to feel a sense of presence of God within us. We feel connected, and in that connection we feel peace, we feel love, we feel and experience joy, the kind of which cannot be found in this world. We do it for us. So the king, Bharat, performed many yagyas, many sacrifices for the satisfaction of God, who we call Vishnu or Krishna. His heart was thus completely uncontaminated and freed from all material attachment, lust, and greed. So there is a two-way benefit. One is that it is benefiting us by acknowledging the truth of God and what we have received from God. But the second is that in doing so, not only do we receive blessings, but those blessings cleanse our heart. They cleanse the material contamination, such as attachment, lust, and greed. You see, that very thing that is so hard to remove from us, desire or lust or greed or attachment, so impossible for us to remove, is easily removed by our devotion to God. We are blessed with that. It is not something as humans that we can do. It is very difficult, almost impossible to get rid of these things. And yet, they can be cleansed and literally eradicated from our heart. So it says that his heart was completely uncontaminated and freed from all these things. The king then continued to enjoy material opulences for many, it says thousands of years. Now we don't understand the idea that people could live thousands of years, but according to the Vedas and even according to the Bible, people did. Now that's take it or leave it, but there have been other civilizations that lived on this planet at different times, and they had different lifespans. We have actually managed to reduce our lifespan considerably. We've increased it on one hand with all our medicine and all our technology, but on the other hand, we've contaminated everything on this planet, from our food to the air to the water, and thereby we've reduced our lifespan. We've developed lifestyles that are unhealthy and not conducive to a long life. We've developed stress and worry and anxiety, and we've now started taking medicines and all kinds of things for that, which also damage our body and manage and reduce our lifespan. So we're not understanding that all the so-called progress we're making is also causing our very destruction. Is causing us to go backward rather than forward. In fact, everything we've invented has had one step backward and one step forward and two step backward. And we've invented the automobile. It created wonderful mobility for us, but then it caused pollution. We've created the nuclear power, but it created the atom bomb. Everything we've done has had that effect. We created mobile phones, and now everybody's glued to those phones and stopped really talking to each other. We're so glued there that we don't even connect with nature. We go into our holiday or our vacation or to a place in nature, and we're still glued to our phone. So yes, we have made progress, but has that progress made us better human beings? Has that progress made us more peaceful? Has it made us more calm? Has it made us more happy? No. The rates of depression have gone up massively. The rates of unhappiness have gone up. The rates of divorce have gone up. Life has not become better. It's become more comfortable, but it's become worse in so many ways. So the king continued to enjoy, after cleansing his heart and his mind, continued to enjoy material opulences for a long time and then retired from family life. He then divided his wealth among his sons and left the palace for Haridwar. And this was the way of Vedic culture, is that people would perform their duties with their family, and then at the end of their family life, they would retire. So generally it was broken into the Varnashram system, in which there were 4 ashrams. Ashrams were Brahmachari ashram, where you were a student from the age of 0, well, not 0, but say 5 to 25. Then around the age of 25, you got married. From 25 to 50, you lived the married life, family, children, all of that. And then from 25 to 75, husband and wife would go together to holy places and devote themselves to spiritual things. They'd go away and come back. They'd get detached from the home, detached from the family. They'd let the kids take care of the house. And by practicing detachment gradually, when they came to around 75, they were now ready to completely detach even from each other and from the family. So they would take sannyas. So you had brahmachari as a student life, grihastha as the family life, vanaprastha. Vana comes from the word forest. Vanaprastha, residence of a forest, residence of sacred places. And then finally sannyas. Sannyas was where you completely left all possessions, all attachments, and moved to either a holy place, a temple, or in the case of ancient Vedic times, even to the forest. So this King Bharat left everything, his family and everything, and went and moved into the forest. And there he engaged in meditations. He went to the gardens of Pula Ashram in Haridwar, where he lived alone. He collected flowers, twigs, tulasi leaves, roots, fruits, and bulbs, along with the water of the Gandhika river. With these he offered food to the Supreme Being, Vasudeva, and worshipped him. Gradually all material desires vanished. He felt full satisfaction within himself, and his love for God increased more and more. And the more that love increased, the more it melted his heart. As he constantly meditated on the reddish lotus feet of Vishnu, the hairs of his body stood on end, and ecstatic bodily symptoms were manifest. Tears flowed from his eyes, so much so that he could not see anything. This is ecstasy. This is what ecstasy feels like and looks like. At that time, his heart, which was like a lake, was filled with the water of ecstatic love, and his mind was immersed in that lake. So this is where spirituality leads. This is where devotion to God leads. A state of ecstasy, a state of pure bliss, a state of pure joy. This is what this path leads to. Now the king at this point, when you are in that state, you appear radiant. He appeared very beautiful. He had a wealth of curly hair on his head and was dressed in deerskin and constantly worshipped Lord Narayan. So this deerskin, he would not have gone and killed a deer. He would have found some animal that was dead and he'd taken the carcass off and he'd just put that around himself just to somehow keep clothed. So he constantly worshipped Narayan or Vasudeva or Vishnu, whatever names you want to give God, by chanting the hymns of the Rig Veda. One morning, our king, Bharat, sat down on the bank of the river Gandaki for a few minutes and began to meditate. Now remember, this was a king. He had had everything. And now he was in sannyas. He had renounced the world and he was focused on his meditations. And he'd been doing this every day till he'd come to that point of great ecstasy. Now while he was sitting down to meditate, he just began, and a black doe, female deer, being very thirsty, came there to drink. So he was by the side of a river, right, where he was meditating. And now this doe comes to drink water. While the doe was drinking with great satisfaction, a lion who was nearby roared very loudly. The doe became agitated. Looking here and there with disturbed eyes, she suddenly leapt across the river. Because she was pregnant, the unborn baby deer fell from her womb into the flowing waters of the river. The doe, in her distress, fell into a ditch and died immediately. I guess the process of childbirth occurring in that very moment, the stress of the moment of running from that lion and falling into a ditch, all of which came together, and she died immediately. The king, seeing the baby floating down the river, felt great compassion. So he rushed out and rescued it. And he brought it back to his ashram. He began to raise it. He fed it grass with his own hands. And he watched over it and protected it from wild animals. Because he was in the jungle. There were lions, there were tigers, there were all kinds of creatures. And usually when someone is a very ascetic person and is very peaceful, they won't disturb such a person. They don't feel any threat from such a person. Somehow that person radiates a certain aura, a certain energy. And so sadhus have been known to meditate and be out in the forests or in the mountains, and animals do not bother them. So the king became very affectionate towards the deer, and sometimes he kissed it out of love. When it itched, he petted it, and he tried always to keep it in a comfortable condition. So I think you might get the picture now as to what's happening. He's becoming very attached to this deer. I don't know if you've experienced this, but if you've had a pet, like a cat or a dog, you know exactly what this is like and how these beautiful creatures can engage us with their big eyes, with their beautiful ways. They can attract us. And in that attracting of us, they create someone who's going to protect them, someone who's going to feed them, someone who's going to care for them. That is the way of nature. That is the way of life. So gradually he became so absorbed in caring for the deer that he forgot the rules and regulations for the advancement of spiritual life, and even forgot to worship the Supreme Godhead, Vishnu, who he had been worshipping with such great ecstasy all this time. He began to think, alas, this helpless young deer. By the force of time, he has now lost its relatives and friends and has taken shelter of me. You see, this is compassion speaking. He is feeling this deep compassion. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong in this, but it's really important to learn something that goes even beyond compassion. Take a look at what happens to this king now. So he's feeling this deer has lost its relatives and friends and has taken shelter of me. It does not know anyone but me, as I have become its father, mother, brother, and relatives. Do you notice a common word in all of this statement of his? Me. Me is the word of the ego. There's no trust in life that life will take care of this animal, this creature. And maybe it wouldn't, maybe when it was very young, but as it grew older. I mean, the mother deer would not be there with that baby all its life, for a few months maybe. And then the baby would move on its own and find its own way. That's how it is in the animal kingdom. But we as human, we raise our children for many years, 18 years, 20 years, sometimes even 30 years. There's a lot of that been happening lately. But he is raising it as a human, thinking that it has no father, mother, brother, relatives. Well, even if he was raised by his mother, he wouldn't have had that. This deer, the king says, has full faith in me. It does not know anyone but me. You notice this me being repeated. This is the ego. This is where the king is falling into a trap and doesn't even realize it. Me, everything. He does not know anyone but me. Therefore, I should not be envious and think that for the deer my own welfare will be destroyed. I should certainly raise, protect, gratify, and caress it. When it has taken shelter with me, how can I neglect it? Even though the deer is disturbing my spiritual life, I realize that a helpless person who has taken shelter cannot be neglected. That would be a great fault. So you see, the king's thinking is very interesting. On one hand, it is based on compassion, it is based on kindness, it is based on love, and you cannot find fault with his thinking. It seems so perfect, what he's saying. nobody would challenge him. But let's see what happened. Due to attachment, the king lay with the deer, walked with it, bathed with it, and even ate with it. He would take it wherever he went out of fear that wild animals might attack it. Thus his heart became bound to the deer in affection. Try to find you some pictures. That's King Bharat with the deer. Oops, that doesn't help. Let's see if we can take that away. No, we have to keep it here. Okay. Sorry about that. Once again, that's the king with the deer. Everything he was doing now, he was doing it with the deer. And wherever he went, he took the deer with him. King Bharat loved the childish behavior of the deer. At times he would carry it on his shoulders due to affection. His heart was so filled with love that at times he would keep the deer on his lap or when he was sleeping on his chest. And in this way he felt great pleasure. At times when he was engaged in meditation or worship, although his activities were unfinished, he would at intervals get up to see where the deer was and make sure that it was comfortably situated. Then his mind and heart would be very satisfied, and he would bestow his blessings upon the deer, saying, "My dear calf, may you be happy in all respects." When he could not see the deer, his mind would be very agitated. He would become like a miser who, having obtained some riches, has lost them and had then become very unhappy. He would be filled with anxiety and would lament due to separation. Thus he would become illusioned and speak as follows: "This deer is now helpless, and it has put its faith in me, and I have proved faithless. Will it ever return and place its faith in me again?" So do you see the rising of guilt? Do you see the rising of a deep sense of responsibility, but at the same time a deep sense of guilt? I have proved faithless. Really? Has he? So often it is our mind goes into these dark places where we start to doubt ourselves, where we begin to character assassinate ourselves. And then we never question our mind. We never question what it's saying. But rather we become helpless victims. And now we feel horrible. But you're feeling horrible because your mind came up with something that is untrue. Most of our unhappiness arises by false projections, false interpretations, false notions that your mind has, and which it then projects onto you, causing you to feel worthless, not good enough, or as he says here, I've proved to be faithless, not worthy of that deer's trust. Will it ever return and place its faith in me? Oh my goodness. There's so much of self-doubt here. Shall I ever see him again, wandering in the garden, eating soft grass? Maybe he's been eaten by a wolf or a dog or a flock of boars or a tiger. So you see his mind's going crazy now. And we've all had this happen when our dog disappeared, or even when a child didn't come home on time. We've all experienced this, but this is our attachment. And that attachment causes the anxiety, the fear. It takes us away from that place of trusting the universe, trusting life, trusting that person's journey, trusting that whatever has to happen will be somehow taken care of. The truth is that that which takes care of us is the Supreme Being. It is God who protects us. It is God who takes care of us. And if we don't know how to connect with God, if we don't know how to be in alignment with God, sure, we can be hurt, sure, all kinds of terrible things can happen. But I'll tell you this, that when you feel that alignment, when you feel that connection, when you have that surrender, things turn around. Even very difficult situations resolve. Things that you thought were impossible happen. The person who was lost is found. The things that could have gone wrong somehow rectify. Or even if they do go wrong, something better emerges. The fruits of our connection with the divine are so powerful that one should not underestimate their capabilities. And we'll see the same thing happen here. So he's worried whether this animal, this baby, this deer has been eaten up by some other creature. The sun is now setting, yet the poor animal who trusted me since his mother died has not returned. When will it again display its personal activities, which are so pleasing? When will it again pacify a wounded heart like mine? I certainly must have bad karma, otherwise the deer would have returned by now. So now he's even thinking he has bad karma. I mean, from a king who had everything in the world, right? Owned palaces and the greatest riches on earth. He gave that up voluntarily and now thinks he had bad karma because a deer left him. But that's the mind, twisting things around. So, speaking like a madman, King Bharata got up and went outside. Seeing the footprints of the deer on the door, he praised the footprints out of love. Now he's looking at the footprints and he's praising them, saying, "O unfortunate Bharat, your austerities and penances are very insignificant compared to the penance and austerity undergone by this earth planet. Due to the earth's severe penances, and the footprints of this deer, which are small, soft, beautiful, and most auspicious, are imprinted on the surface of this fortunate planet." So now even the planet is blessed to have the deer on it. Seeing above his head the dark marks of the rising moon. So now the moon has come out. There are some marks on the moon. He sees now in those marks the deer. He says, "Can it be that the moon, who is so kind to an unhappy man, might also be kind upon my deer, knowing that it has strayed from home and has become motherless? This moon has given the deer shelter near itself just to protect it from the fearful attacks of a lion." So he's finding solace in the moon, and maybe it will protect his deer. "It is as though I am feeling separation from my own son. Due to the burning fever of this separation, I am suffering as if inflamed by a forest fire. My heart, which is like the lily of the land, is now burning. Seeing me so distressed, the moon is certainly splashing its shining nectar upon me, just as a friend throws water on another friend who has a high fever. In this way, the moon is bringing me happiness." In this way, King Bharat was overwhelmed by an uncontrollable desire, which was manifest in the form of the deer. He fell down from his spiritual practices after giving up the association of his own sons and family and home and possessions and everything else, and considering them stumbling blocks on the path of spiritual life. He had now become attached to a deer. How could he have such uncontrollable affection for a deer? This was definitely due to his past karma. Why does it say that? You see, the principles of attachment are something we have to all learn about. The principles of attachment are I, me, and mine. Specifically, mine. First, there is an attachment to I. You think you're this body. You think you're this mind. You think your thoughts are you. You think your emotions are you. So there's I. Then there's me, this identity, the ego. Right? This is what you think, this is me. And all the things you've done and all the things that have happened to you and all the stories you have of your life, which you can so convincingly share with other people. This is me. You don't know me, we say to others. I, me, and mine. Mine are my possessions. Mine are my loved ones, my children, my partner, mine. We have this sense of belonging. This belonging is attachment. Now, we need belonging. We need attachment. Because without that, we wouldn't do anything or get anywhere. But we have to balance that with the truth. The truth that nothing is mine. The thing that no one is mine. Not my children, not my partner, not the things I have. Nothing is mine. So we have to balance that. It is the human condition to want to be attached. And we need to be attached. Otherwise, we wouldn't raise our children. Otherwise, we wouldn't care for our partners. Otherwise, there would be no such thing as family. So we need attachment. It is vital. And yet at the same time, we must learn to balance it, knowing that everything belongs to God and that nothing is mine and that everything I have, I will give up at the end of this life. That is the ultimate reality. And that truth has to be used as a countermeasure for all our attachment. Then there will be balance in our thinking. Then we will not go through what Bharat is going through here. In due course of time, insurmountable death. Why is it insurmountable? Because no one can overcome it. No one. None of these doctors, researchers, scientists who want to overcome it will ever be able to overcome death. But in due course of time, insurmountable death, which is compared to a venomous snake that enters the hole created by a mouse, situated itself before the king. At the time of death, the king saw that the deer was sitting by his side exactly like his own son and was lamenting his death. Now the deer he's seeing is lamenting the king's death. Actually, the mind of the king was absorbed in the body of the deer, and consequently in his next life he acquired the body of a deer. So now his next life he became a deer. However, there was one advantage. Although he lost his human body, he did not forget the incidents of his past life. Although in the body of a deer, King Bharat, due to the devotional practices of his past life, could understand the cause of his birth in that body. Considering his past and present life, he constantly repented his activities. Now, for most of us, that won't be the case. If we are very attached to a particular creature, then very unlikely that we're going to remember our past life, or that it was that attachment that then caused us to now have a different body. This is the king remembering the deer at the last moments of his life. And the fact of the matter is, there's been all this discussion around gender. Gender has become such a big issue. But the reality behind that issue is the soul has no gender. The soul is not a he or a she or a they or an us. It's none of that. It has no such identity. The real person, that which we are, has no gender. None of it. We go into different bodies. Sometimes we're in a male body, sometimes we're in a female body, and sometimes we're in an animal body, as you see with the case of King Bharat. But none of that is who we are. The bodies change just as our clothing changes, just as our houses change, just as our cars change, just as we change our cell phones. We change bodies. Even in this life, we change bodies. We change from childhood, from being a baby, to becoming a child, to becoming a teenager, and bodies that look all different. And then we become an adult, and then from an adult we become middle-aged, and from middle-aged we become old. I remember times when I've gone to school reunions and I've looked at people there, and it's like, somewhere inside this form, I can tell there's like this deja vu feeling, lies somebody who I knew when they were 15 years old, but now they're 45, and I can barely recognize them. Right? I'm just like a glimmer of something that used to be, and I'm sure they have the same feeling towards me. But that's how wild it is. Our body is changing every few months, every few years, depending on the organ. Some organs are changing every few months. Some parts of our body are changing every few years. And it's said perhaps every 7 years or less, we have a completely different body. All the cells have changed. Nothing remains the same. So with that in mind, we realize that I'm not the body. I am the same person, but my body has kept changing, even in this life. And so it will be in the next, and the next, and the next, and the next. So King Bharat has the good fortune that even though he's now in the body of a deer, he's able to remember his previous life. Unfortunately, we don't. All of us don't. We forget. But the knowledge of our past lives is there. It's not here in our conscious mind. It is there deeply in the subconscious or even unconscious. I'm not sure where exactly to place it. And it can be accessed, as we've learned to do in regressions and stuff like that. But the fact of the matter is that we don't remember consciously. In Bharat's case, King Bharat's case, he was able to remember. We've seen this also happen sometimes with children, young children who remember their past lives and have been found in certain villages, in certain places, and they know where they were born or where they were in the previous life, which town, which village, what its name was. Sometimes they even know where their body had been murdered and hidden, and they've helped people find that. And there's no way they could have ever gone there or known that. So many examples exist, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. There have been like 50 years of research, in fact, by researchers who've been looking into all of this. Now, here's King Bharat in this predicament. In the body of a deer, he begins to lament. He says, "What misfortune! I have fallen from the path of the self-realized. I gave up my real sons, wife, and home to advance in spiritual life. And I took shelter in a solitary holy place in the forest." So, just to give you context, he's now in the body of a deer, remembering and lamenting. "I became self-controlled and self-realized, and I engaged constantly in devotional service, hearing, thinking, chanting, worshipping, and remembering the Supreme Godhead, Vasudeva. I was successful in my attempt, so much so that my mind was always absorbed in him. However, due to my personal foolishness, my mind again became attached, this time to a deer. Now I have obtained the body of a deer and have fallen far from my devotional practices. By constant repentance, he became completely detached from all material things. He then left his dear mother and went to the ashram of sage Pulastya. He was now very careful not to fall victim to bad association. Without disclosing his past to anyone, he remained in that ashram and ate only dry leaves. He was not exactly alone, for he had the association of the Paramatma, the Super Soul, the presence of God within him. So notice here, God is present not just in the body of the humans, but also in that of the animals. The soul can be in the body of a human or in that of an animal, or for that matter, an insect or a fish or any other creature, or a tree or a plant. It is said there are 8,400,000 species of life, according to the Vedas. And the human form of life is so rare that when we get it, we must maximize this opportunity for self-realization. And when we don't, we will go back into those animal species all over again. So, even as a deer, he had the association of the Paramatma, the Super Soul, the presence of God within him, ready, listening to him, guiding him. In this way, he waited for death and finally gave up that body. So there's a lot to be unpacked here. There's a lot to learn. There's a lot that we can take away. I'd like to know your thoughts. What did you make of this? Let's see if you've had any questions, any feedback. Cindy writes, after last week's session, I had 3 nights of torturous dreams about lust for persons and things, anger, sadness, and fear of loss. Yes, my mind made up stories even in wakeful thoughts. Yeah, you're coming face to face with the things that trap us. It's not that, I need to make this very clear to you, it's not that lust is bad. It is not that anything is bad. All of it has been created by the same divine source that created all of us. We were designed to have desire. We were designed to get attached. So it's not that desire is bad. It's not that attachment is bad. It's not that it is sinful or any of this kind of nonsense. But we must look at a thing by its outcomes. If that thing binds us to this world, if it takes away our freedom to be who we truly are and to liberate us from this cycle of birth and death, then that thing is an impediment. That's what we need to understand. It's not that attachment is bad. It's not that desire is bad. It's not that lust is bad. If there were no lust, there would be no procreation. There would be no propagation of the species. If there was no desire, we would never make anything or do anything with ourselves, with our lives. So keep in mind, it's not about that. It's when you come to the path of liberation, when that becomes your goal, then there are certain things you have to let go of. Just as I was saying earlier, when you want to go to a job, you have to let go of your comforts of home. You let go your TV. You let go your comfortable couch, and you go and you sit in an office desk and you work. You have to let go of something to get something. When you want the ultimate thing, you let go of everything to get that. So it's very important to realize that we are not here just to eat, drink, and be merry. That's not the purpose of human life. That is not why we're here. Because if we were, then those things would make us happy. And we would always be happy. And we would never be anything but happy. We would not suffer. We would not be in any way bothered or hurt or upset or angry or any of that stuff. We'd be blissful. But that's not the case. The world does not have the ability to give us that. Only when we are in a place where we can begin to connect with our soul do we begin to experience something that is of a lasting nature, lasting peace, lasting happiness, lasting love. Celie writes, it was a mindful washing, so to speak, an uptick of awareness prompted by these lessons. A mindful washing. Actually, all of this knowledge is not just for you to accumulate in your head. It's not about even remembering. It's about allowing it to enter into your consciousness and to wash you from the inside. The Bhagavatam, when we started reading it, says exactly that it is capable of destroying the darkness within our hearts. This Bhagavatam, which you are hearing right now, is capable of annihilating the darkness of material attachment, of material desire, of material identification, and liberating us from this false notion of who we are, and bringing us to the real understanding of our spiritual self. And Celia continues, like the king with a deer, I only live with a sweet pet rabbit named Pete. He teaches me many things, through our dependence with each other. Yes, and so I would say to you, be very careful. By all means, if there's an animal in your life, a dog, a cat, a deer, a rabbit, whatever it might be very careful in your attachment. Make sure that your attachment is towards the divine, towards God. And then bless that animal to come with you. Bless that animal by letting it hear about these things. Because within that animal still is the soul, and that soul can hear. So let it hear kirtan, let it hear the names of God being chanted, let it hear these talks. Let it be able to be blessed with all of this. In this way, even that animal will gain liberation from the cycle of birth and death. Leo writes, I must have been thinking about, and I died last then. He was, okay. Yes, Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita that wherever and whatever your mind is fixed upon at the time of leaving this body, to that state you will go. So whatever you're attached to a certain beautiful woman or a very handsome man, whatever it is you're attached to, that if your mind is really fixed on that, see, you might have heard, when people die, they remember everything that happened in their life. All flashes by. Not only that, all their attachments are presented in front of them. And whatever it is they're most attached to, that will form the basis of what they will become in their next life. The sum total of what you've done and your core attachments that have arisen out of that. That will determine where you go. If you are, on the other hand, attached to God, then you will go to God. If you are attached to and in love with and have filled your mind with God, if that has been the center of your life, then that is where you will go. That's why Krishna says, and whoever remembers me upon leaving this body will come to me. Of this there is no doubt. So it's not a pie in the sky kind of thing. The fact of the matter is proven again and again. Even in regressions, we see that where there is a particular wounding or unresolved issue, or where there is some kind of a trauma, then the person comes back amongst those very people to try and resolve that. We are connected to our past lives, and our future is connected to our present. And so we are in this web again and again and again, trying to work things out. And people say, well, what is so I'm here, I want to become free of karma. It's not just enough to become free of karma. It's not enough to become free of sin. You have these, Christians will tell you that, oh, if I accept Christ, then I'll be free of all my sins. But you're going to keep committing more, and you know that. We've had this tradition for thousands of years before Christ, where the guru takes away all your karma, all the sinful things, but then you make more. There's never an end to it. The fact is that you must live your life in a way that you become free, sinless, karmaless, desireless. Right? And that comes by replacing desire for the world with desire for God. That comes with replacing attachment for the world with attachment for God. It comes by replacing all of these things with God. And then when your mind has become totally absorbed in God, you're ready to go back to God. It's not just that because somebody blessed you, therefore you will go. Not good enough. Blessing you is getting you on the path. Definitely. It's a great asset. But you must walk that path. You must change your consciousness. You must transform yourself. Ultimately, you must give up this false notion of who you think you are and become deeply identified with the soul and reconnect the soul back to its source or God. It's not that we throw God out of the picture and we just think, oh, there's just the soul and there's the light. No, the light can be whatever it wants to be. If it wants to personify itself, it will. Whether I believe it or not doesn't make a difference. For those who want to merge into the light, so be it. And those who want a personal relationship. Because you see, it's very hard for us to give up relationship. It's very hard for us to give up wanting to connect with someone. You want me to fall in love with someone, then show me what that person looks like. Show me what that person does. Then maybe I'll fall in love with them. Otherwise, how can I fall in love with something I've never seen or heard, or it's just an energy, it's just something out there, the universe? How do I fall in love with that? How do I fall in love with something impersonal? And because that's not possible, therefore, the divine incarnates, the divine personifies itself and presents itself to us as the most adorable, beautiful, and wonderful being of all. Okay, with that, we're going to wind up. And I want you to know one thing, that for the next 2 weeks, I'm going to be attending some seminars. So we will have to take a break for 2 weeks. So I'll be back here on the 25th, I believe it is. Yes, 25th of July. So for those of you that I hope you've registered that. Next 2 weeks, we will not be here. Thank you so much for all your support, for all your love, for being here in so many different ways. Deeply grateful to all of you. And I'll see you again soon. Take care. Hare Krishna.